Good morning. We are life cycle celebrants, and it is part of our mandate to let people know that meaningful, personalized ceremony is available, accessible, viable, and important to their lives. I learned this from my celebrant. Cindy. Now, ultimately, for me, the goal is to be truly a life cycle celebrant, to serve families throughout their lives through a variety, if not all, of their life transitions. I encourage everybody to go get triple certified. Now, Charlotte spoke this morning of being the family celebrant, and that is the goal. I think many of us feel that same desire to move past seeing our clients through just the one event, but rather to be called on time and time again. One of the ways that we can spread the word is by showing people who come to us for ceremonies how ceremony can go beyond just that one event that they're planning today. And the ceremony that they plan today can be a part of future milestones and create a pattern of tradition. So then we can really be that family's womb to tomb celebrant. Traditions give us something to look forward to, a familiar handhold through life's milestones and the changing seasons and passage of time. But many of us today find ourselves short on traditions because our families are far-flung, our communities disconnected. For some, the foundation of tradition just isn't there. And for others, traditions are left behind when we take a different path than our families of origin. But we can show our clients how to create their own traditions. Elements from today's ceremony can be carried on in future ceremonies, and elements from past events can be brought into the ceremony that we're creating today. As life cycle celebrants, we are aware that there are connections between events. Milestones that were marked years ago can inform the celebrations we have today, and this cycle of life is also a cycle of ceremony. Take, for instance, celebrant clients Brad and Janet. Now, Brad and Janet chose a life cycle celebrant for their wedding because they wanted to have their wedding at home, which I think we hear a lot of that. I picked somebody out of the book because I wanted to have it someplace special. But they also wanted to keep their ceremony familiar to their families. So in keeping with family tradition, they decided to have a unity candle ceremony just like Janet's parents did. Now, show of hands, how many established celebrants in this room hate the unity candle? Come on, be honest. It's been done. It's not our most creative element. They blow out if there's the slightest breeze. But have you ever considered the unity candle as something that can be carried forward, not just to one ceremony, but through an entire lifetime of ceremonies? Let's see what happens with Brad and Janet's family over the course of their lives. Brad and Janet used that unity candle for their wedding ceremony, and a year later, they have a baby. And because they had a great experience, they come back to their celebrant and say, we want a ceremony celebrating the arrival of our child. So here we are looking for symbols of love of this family. We already know of one, the unity candle, from their wedding. So now that unity candle becomes the family candle. So let's look at what goes into this candle ceremony. It's not just the one candle. There are candles here that symbolize the individuals involved. So now we have the family candle. We have the candle for the mother, formerly our bride. We have the candle for the father, formerly our groom. And now another candle is added for the baby. I think the focus tends to be on that big, fat family candle. But those individual tapers are important and carried forward as well. In fact, you might recommend to your clients that they decorate those tapers so that they know whose is whose. Now, the baby is getting older. We're going to call her Sarah. And Sarah is going to have a coming-of-age ceremony. Now, of course, they come back to their celebrant because they remember being told about coming-of-age ceremonies back when Sarah was first celebrated. So we've already planted the seed here. And the celebrant has kept in touch via Facebook, and you all know about this from taking the social media class available this summer. So they've seen postings about coming-of-age ceremonies that the celebrant has done, and they're really into this. So we break out that family candle again, and this time, And this time we're starting with a big fat family candle representing the family unit. And we take out Sarah's taper again. And that taper that was her baby candle in the beginning of her life, she now lights from the big fat family candle to be recognized as an individual. Her flame contributing to the light of her family, but also we see that Sarah is growing up to be a singular person. So now as she grows and eventually becomes independent, she might use that taper that's been part of her life since she was a baby and pack it with her as she takes her things to start her own home. Maybe she lights it that first night in her first apartment because Sarah has been raised with ceremony and she knows that she can find comfort in it. Maybe she carries that candle forward when she starts her own family and it becomes the taper at her civil union ceremony and part of the family candle ritual when they have an adoption ceremony. One little candle becomes a tradition, a unifying symbol through all the milestones in her life. Now we go back to the parents, Brad and Janet. As they get older and celebrate their empty nest, they have a ceremony of their own. They light their tapers from the family candle to recognize that now mom and dad are free to pursue their own interests. Of course, both of them go off to become celebrants. And of course, for all of these little ceremonies, they're calling their celebrant. As they get older still, one of them passes on, and again we take out that family candle. Bye, Brad. This time, we may suggest using the family candle and light Brad's taper, leaving that taper behind at the service and carrying the family candle out as a symbol that we know that the family light is still whole. But part of that light, the light of our dearly departed Brad, now shines elsewhere. Over the years, Brad's taper can be lit in remembrance on his birthday, and in time, Janet may use her own taper or the family candle in sustenance rituals like meditation. And later on, that family candle becomes an heirloom, and it's passed on to another generation, and we start all over again. 3 generations of a family have a touchstone that links the milestones in their lives because Brad and Janet wanted to continue a boring family tradition when they got married, and their celebrant showed them how to keep it going beyond that. Now, you might think, that's a lot of use to get out of one fat candle and a couple of tapers. There's always the option of encouraging your clients to buy the supersized candle at IKEA. But for the craftier clients out there, the beauty of using candles is that when they start to run low, you can melt them down, add more wax, and make new candles. The resulting candles will always have something of the original candle in them. So the candles themselves become something of a renewable resource. And this goes for the larger family candle and individual tapers as well. Imagine candles that last over generations. There's a lot we can do with these candles. Housewarmings, divorce ceremonies, support ceremonies if there's an illness. Imagine a room full of people lighting their individual tapers around that of someone fighting cancer. Now, sand ceremonies. are an obvious parallel, and they can be used similarly. One of my first baby namings involved the parents adding sand, representing their son, to the sand from their wedding. I know they planned on doing the same thing for future children as well, but let's look at their son. Later, when he moves out on his own, maybe he takes a small bit of that sand with him as a reminder that wherever he is, he's still part of the family. I can see a ceremony being built just around that. Or I can see him using part of that sand at his own wedding. That's my mom's wedding cake. Now, I can see new sand also being added to the family sand if the family moves to a new home. A part of that sand being left behind at a funeral service, maybe at the grave. So there's lots that we can do with these elements that we use all the time. Sometimes it won't be a ritual that our clients carry on, but something more symbolic. We can work with our clients to find those important elements that encourage their use beyond today's ceremony. Sometimes we may find a tradition that has already taken root. In thinking about this presentation, I realized that there were some things that my family has been passing down or carrying on without really thinking about it. These are my grandparents. The dress my grandmother wore on her wedding day was refashioned to a cover for the bassinet that her children used as infants. And I'm getting choked up. When my sister was married, I took that same fabric and I made the ring pillow for her wedding. And then I used it for my wedding. These are the guest books from my wedding. We had put one out on each table. And last summer, when we renewed our vows, we put one out again, this time signed by new friends. Many of them students. So you can bet those books will be making an appearance going forward at other anniversaries and if we have kids at their milestone events. This month's Real Simple magazine has an article called The Mom Book, about a family where gifts for mom are drawings and writings in a special book that gets used for special occasions and holidays, her birthday, Mother's Day, Christmas. And this is the type of thing I'm hoping that we're going to inspire. So, where do we find these extendable ceremonies? I say look to your favorite ceremony elements, the ones you use all the time. Ask your clients what they've done in past ceremonies. What are their family traditions? Even the ones who think that they've left behind their family traditions because they're not part of the church or they're not really culturally active, there might be something that we can say, you can carry that on. It's yours. So the idea of that sand ritual with the baby naming, that came because I asked the clients, first off, what did you do at your wedding? Check out a museum and touch base with those ceremony elements that have endured through the ages. This is from the Museum of Natural History. And look to your colleagues as well. Join the association, renew your membership, get involved with the Yahoo group. It may be the single greatest think tank on ceremony creation ever assembled. Now, I asked some of you for your favorite ceremony elements so I could think about extending them, and I was also inspired by the ideas of some of my students this year. So here are some more ideas. Wish boxes come up a lot in class discussions and the ceremonies that we write for class. In addition to extremely complicated Jewish-Hindu housewarming ceremonies, they are popular at baby namings and weddings as well. So why not talk to our clients about making that wish box a living tradition? Add wishes to all the milestones of that person's life so that they always have it to look forward to and to turn to. Make it a centerpiece of family milestone celebrations. A tradition of gathering wishes on birthdays and graduations can become a sustenance ritual of reading those words when times are tough. Wine shows up in many of our rituals. So let's start with the wine ceremony at the wedding. Encourage your couples to buy a case to keep on hand for future occasions. Now, it should be something that'll keep. And there might be special occasions all through that first year. That case might go quick. They can toast with that wine when celebrating anniversaries and housewarmings. Busy couples can use that wine in sustenance rituals. Once a month, the wine comes out for a special dinner date night. They can use the same wine to celebrate milestone birthdays, family achievements like new jobs and graduations. Now, we heard Jessie and Lamira talk about what Jessie calls the circle of love in her ceremonies, about having guests place a flower, a seashell, or a stone in a circle that the couple gets married in. Not only can this ritual be carried down through any ceremonies that we use to make sacred space, but those individual objects, those stones and shells specifically, can find their way into future rituals. For example, at a baby naming, if the guests are asked to bring a small stone or shell representing their wishes for the child, the couple could choose to include some of the stones and shells from their wedding. At the passing of one family member, one of those stones or shells could be used on the remembrance table or left at the graveside, which I learned from Marta Adubato is a tradition dating back to the Old Testament. Now, Marta also imagined placing a stone with a photo of the departed on the family altar in a parallel to that tradition. So we don't have to stick strictly to the tradition. We can create a new tradition that's an offshoot. Or there's Lamira Martin's version, in which the name of the loved one who has passed is spoken while stones are placed in a container. Selena Ashurst told me about another ritual involving stones, setting one's intention in stone. This can be used for weddings, where the couple places their hands on a stone and sets their intention for the marriage. In Selena's vision, the couple stands on a large stone when they make their vows. Or they could hold the stone and save it for a keepsake for later. In either case, that same stone could make an appearance at their vow renewal, either with them returning to the spot where they were married, or them holding the stone again. I envision this also being a key element in a sustenance ritual for their marriage. Imagine them returning to that stone to settle disputes, being reminded of the foundations of their marriage. Or each person holding the stone as they say their piece in a disagreement. Using the stone as a talking stick, only the person holding it gets to speak. But the speaker is also reminded when they hold the stone that they hold their vows, so they keep those vows in mind as they speak. Maybe it'll gentle their words. Imagine that same couple setting in stone their intentions when they have a child or start a new project like a family business or saving to buy a home. The result is a solid reminder of what they want, touchable, present whenever they need it, even after the ritual. As a paperweight maybe sitting on the credit card that says, is this purchase in line with the intentions you set to save up for that house? I received 2 suggestions for rituals that use a ball of yarn. Sasha Jones likes to use the yarn in a wedding ritual. The ball of yarn is passed throughout those gathered, and a ring warming is performed by sliding the rings along the yarn on a loop of ribbon. Now, this creates a web of yarn. I imagine that couple could use that same ritual later to do as Cindy Reed did in her adoptive mother ceremony. They tossed that ball of yarn to weave a web of support for Cindy. And later the yarn was cut into pieces, which everyone then tied to their wrists till Akila came home from Ethiopia. And you can keep it going from there. Use that color yarn as the official family color. A family can show support for a child who's preparing for their project, for their coming-of-age ceremony process, by wearing the yarn as it was done in Cindy's ceremony. The same yarn could be used to knit a baby blanket that gets passed down as a family heirloom. Dana Zipkin had a great idea for a ritual that can easily become a living tradition. She came up with the idea of a planting ceremony in which, in the first ritual, in this case the overcomplicated Jewish Hindu housewarming, cuttings of the plant the plant is planted in the first ceremony, and then later cuttings from that plant are passed on to others. In this case, it was a gratitude gift linked to the housewarming. But imagine a family planting a rose bush, and then gifting cuttings from that bush as their children grow and move to their new homes. Using roses from that bush at weddings and other family milestones, planting a cutting from that bush when a child comes into the family, gifting cuttings to the in-laws as their family grows, and then finally planting a cutting at the graveside as members of the family pass on. Places can become tradition. If the couple gets married at home or in a public place, like a park, they can revisit that place for future ceremonies or just as a sustenance ritual to touch base with that day. My husband and I often go to the park where Cindy married us, just to stand on that spot and have a quick hug. But imagine as that family grows, that spot becoming the site of baby namings, vow renewals, and family reunions, for which, of course, the family will call upon their family celebrant. Whether we think about it or not, food works its way into our traditions. Our holidays are full of food. Turkey at Thanksgiving, eggs for Ostara or Easter, matzah for Passover, fruitcake for Christmas, whether we eat it or just pass it around. A year after the wedding, couples share a piece of wedding cake from their wedding. Food can become a regular feature in our ceremonies. A taste of bitter and sweet can be a part of weddings to remind the couple of what life holds even when you're in love. The same ritual can be performed at a ceremony welcoming a child as a reminder to that family and community of what they will guide the child through in life. And at that child's coming of age ceremony to remind the honoree that with the perks of adulthood come some bitter moments we have to bear as well. Next one. And how could I forget storytelling? When we talk to our clients about telling their story, remind them that the telling of their story can be a tradition as well. Imagine people looking forward to celebrating milestones of ceremony as a means of not just telling their story, but defining it. People who have lived their lives having their stories told, will know that a ceremony marking the transition can communicate to their loved ones how the honoree sees that transition and how they want to deal with it. All my fundamental students know that I always tell them, when you sit down for a housewarming or a moving to the retirement community ceremony, don't assume it's happy or sad. Wait till your client tells you how they see the event. What we want to look for are ideas that are sustainable. Objects that can be maintained over the years, places that can be revisited, symbols that will still be within reach later. A sound, a kind of food, a color yarn, a piece of clothing. The things or circumstances that can be recreated, rituals like the circle of love or the yarn ritual. Come to your client with examples. This is easy to do if you begin long before you meet your clients by looking at those things that you like to include in ceremonies and rituals. Not just for your clients, but for yourself and your own family. We meet a lot of people. And as ceremony becomes a recurring part of their lives, their friends and family will notice, and those people will be inspired to enrich their lives with ceremony as well, creating their own traditions. And perhaps calling upon a life cycle celebrant will become a family tradition too. Thank you.